Hey friends, welcome to another Generation Tech video about Star Trek, 10 little known features of the USS Enterprise 1701D. So grab some Romulan ale, some popcorn, maybe some gach if that's your thing, and let's get started. Number 1. Replaceable bridge modules. Now, we often criticize Starfleet for putting their bridges in the most obvious, easy to hit place right in the middle of the saucer section on the top of the ship. But there's actually good reason for this. Since the bridge module was on the exterior of the ship, it could actually be removed and replaced with a new upgraded bridge. I'm guessing this is what happened between the Next Generation series and the first Next Generation movie, Generations. It went from this, notice the wall panels on the right, to this, notice the extra station behind Picard replacing those panels, and they added mood lighting. The bridge was a lot wider in the movie, and this is because movies are shot in wide screen, so it makes sense that the director would want it to be wider. But from a fictional perspective, I think these are upgrades to the Enterprise. Another interesting fact that's detailed in the Star Trek Next Generation technical manual is that the bridge that you see on the show wasn't actually the original Enterprise bridge. During the testing phase of the ship, another bridge module was used that had self-contained life support systems and could also eject and fly away from the ship at sublight speeds should the crew need to evacuate. The Enterprise D bridge that was installed after this also had self-contained life support systems and could maintain a Class M planet atmosphere for up to 72 hours, even if the ship's primary and secondary life support systems had been damaged. Number 2. Whale and dolphin tanks. Yes, the Enterprise D had fish tanks on board, and no, we are not talking about this fish tank in Picard's ready room. The Enterprise actually had huge aquarium-style tanks that were big enough for whales and dolphins. You can see them labeled on the Enterprise blueprints as Ceterian Navigation Lab. You never see these tanks on the show, but we were able to sneak in and get this undercover footage. The tanks are probably classified since they're actually using the labor of living whales and dolphins to do some kind of navigation research for the ship. Listen to the following excerpt from the technical manual. G and N system research tasks are handled by a mixed consultation crew of 12 Atlantic and Pacific bottlenose dolphins. The crew is overseen by 2 additional Ceterians or Takayas whale. All theoretical topics in navigation are studied by these elite specialists, and their recommendations for system-wide upgrades are implemented by Starfleet. So they're exploiting the labor of innocent whales and dolphins. No wonder they keep it hush-hush. But it makes sense. Ever since the Earth was almost destroyed by the whale probe in Star Trek IV, you'd want to keep a couple of whales on board to negotiate with angry space whales. Number 3. Captain's Yacht. The captain of the Enterprise got his own luxury yacht. No, that's not it. The Captain's Yacht is actually an auxiliary spacecraft that is used for diplomatic missions, and it's housed in the underside of the middle of the saucer section of the ship. It can deploy at speeds of up to warp 7, although it does not have a warp drive system itself. The ship features 2 decks with staterooms for diplomatic guests and the captain. It's capable of planetary landing with a standard atmospheric cruising speed of Mach 6 and a maximum speed of Mach 20. In space, the yacht can travel at 0.65 Cochranes, that's 0.65 of the speed of light. The Enterprise D's yacht is basically your classic flying saucer design. The yacht is another one of those things that we never got to see in the show, but you do get to see a version of the yacht on the Enterprise E in the movie Star Trek Insurrection. You know, that otherwise dull movie with just one memorable line.
And have you noticed how your boobs have started to firm up? Not that we care about such things in this day and age. Uh-huh. Thank you, Data.
I have an odd craving for the blood of a live Kolar beast. This environment must be affecting me again.
And have you noticed how your boobs have started to firm up?
This version of the yacht has many of the capabilities of the Enterprise D's yacht, but with warp engines and weapon systems. Number 4. Warp core ejection system. The Enterprise's warp core was a temperamental thing. It was always breaking down.
Bridge to engineering, Miss LaForge. Why isn't my ship moving?
I'm on it, Captain. There's a warp plasma conduit out of alignment.
Hard to imagine how much energy is harnessed in there.
Imagination is not necessary. The scale is readily quantifiable. We are presently generating 12.75 billion gigawatts per...
Bad guys were always trying to plant bombs on it. and it's always having coolant leaks.
Coolant leak! Bridge, we've got a coolant leak in the engine core. I can't shut it down. I estimate 2 minutes to a warp core breach. Got a problem down here. The magnetic interlocks have been ruptured. Coolant leak! We have a coolant leak, everybody. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Bridge, we have a new problem. We're 5 minutes from a warp core breach.
And Geordi's response is always to close this glorified garage door and claim there is nothing he can do, causing the bridge crew to separate the ship. But there was another way. The Enterprise D actually had a warp core ejection system, which meant they could eject the entire core out into space and let it blow up a safe distance away from the ship. The Enterprise D's technical manual even says that the computer will eject the warp core automatically if, quote, damage threatens to overwhelm the structural integrity field systems of the ship enough to prevent safe retention of the core. In addition to the core, antimatter pods could also be ejected since they contain enough energy to vaporize the ship. To show how easy this is, here's the USS Voyager ejecting its warp core.
Computer, eject the warp core.
But instead, Geordi let these innocent children be subjected to poisonous gases leaking out of that thing for a full 5 minutes.
Starship separation in 5 minutes.
Now, I know that some smarty pants will probably come along typing in the comments, the Klingon attack knocked the warp core ejection system offline, that's why they couldn't eject the core. But that is never mentioned on screen. I know the real reason they couldn't eject the core. It's because Paramount Pictures demanded that the Enterprise D was destroyed in that movie to pave the way for a more cinematic looking ship in the movies to come. Anyway, the Enterprise D could eject its core, an important safety feature. But maybe Geordi didn't want to eject the core because he liked using it to chat up girls.
Your ship. What kind of energy output is it capable of generating?
We have a matter-antimatter warp reaction system, the most powerful in Starfleet.
Number 5. It could generate its own antimatter. Just like nuclear-powered submarines that can travel for years without refueling, the Enterprise could do that, and on top of that, it could create its own fuel. Now, the Enterprise used 2 types of fuel in its matter-antimatter reaction system, or warp core. Deuterium, the matter component, could be delivered to the ship by tanker, or also collected through the Buzzard ram scoop, these red things on the front of the warp nacelles. But anti-deuterium, the antimatter element, couldn't be collected. It would have to be manufactured during a fuel shortage using the ship's antimatter generator. The generator, located on deck 42, weighed 1,400 metric tons and was thus one of the heaviest components of the ship. It could reverse the charge of normal matter, turning it into antimatter, but it was incredibly matter and power intensive. It would take 10 units of deuterium to make just 1 unit of anti-deuterium, but it could save the ship during fuel shortages when no tankers were able to reach the Enterprise. Number 6. The turbolift system travels horizontal as well as vertical. You may be familiar with the Enterprise's turbolift system, but you may not know that these lifts travel horizontally in addition to vertically. Star Trek Discovery tries to portray the turbolift network, but in my opinion does a really poor job. I don't think there would be that much open space. It looks more like the inside of Space Mountain. Anyway, you get a sense of this vertical and horizontal movement when Geordi gets involved in a turbolift accident. He gets pressed against the door and then the wall, since the lift is moving horizontally. Note the lights out the window moving horizontally too. Then the lift does start moving vertically and it gets flung against the floor and the ceiling.
Tractor beam ready, sir.
But it didn't always operate like that. It was just that the Enterprise's systems were susceptible to the odd malfunction.
That our computer was daydreaming? Computer, identify malfunction immediately.
Pawn to Bishop 4. Knight to King's Rook 3.
Other features of the turbolift system were a dedicated turbolift shaft between the main bridge and the battle bridge, and redundant turbolift cars on the bridge, so the bridge officers always had a ride. Comes in handy when you're late for your yoga class, fencing lesson, or barroom brawl. Number 7. The windows could open. So you know those pilot selfies where the pilot just literally leans out the window and takes a picture of himself while they're flying in the air? Well, no, you couldn't do that on the Enterprise, opening up the window to space and taking a hollow image of yourself. No, it doesn't work like that. And even those pilot selfies are fake, by the way. It's impossible to open the cockpit window while the plane is in the air because the windows open inwards and the pressure inside the plane is much higher than the pressure outside. And look, you can see the reflection of the airfield in their glasses. Basically, they take the photo on the ground and then Photoshop it. But the windows on the Enterprise D could actually open. This was part of their abandoned ship procedure. Most windows were equipped with emergency release mechanisms below the window, but these mechanisms would only work if all crew members within a contiguous compartment were wearing environmental suits. And then the plan would be just to float out into space and get away from the ship. In addition to windows, crew members could also exit through shuttle bay doors, turbo lift shafts, and airlocks, and then they would just float there, awaiting rescue. Number 8, it had an arboretum. So if fencing classes, firing range, and holodecks weren't enough for you, the Enterprise D had an arboretum on board. Now, arboretum is a little bit of an over-the-top name. Arboretum means a garden of trees. It was basically just a botanical garden, and it looked like this. Now, the arboretum was one of the only places that the civilians traveling on the ship could work at. Miles O'Brien's wife, Keiko, was the head of the plant biology lab there. Number 9, its main shuttle bay was massive. If you've ever looked at the Enterprise D blueprints, you may be surprised to see just how massive the main shuttle bay in the saucer section is. Located on Deck 4, but with high ceilings that reached into Deck 3, as well as elevators down to a lower bay on Deck 5. The shuttle bay took up a huge amount of space that you never really get a sense of in the show. But you do get a sense of how big it was from this 3D model created by the Enterprise 3D project, an ambitious fan project to create an interior and exterior model of the Enterprise D using the Unreal 3D graphics engine. Unfortunately, it seems CBS forced the project to shut down due to copyright issues. Number 10, the ship's computer was massive. The Enterprise D had 3 computer cores, each spanning about 9 decks, 2 in the saucer section and 1 in the battle section. These cores were each capable of handling all the operations of the ship, so offered a double backup if one of the cores failed. And in addition to operating the ship, we know that the computer also had a selection of games.
Pawn to bishop 4. Knight to king's rook 3.
Also, one amusing thing is that in the technical manual, they talk about an RF data network that links pads and handheld devices such as tricorders to the ship's computer. So this was written in the 90s, but they were basically just talking about Wi-Fi. I wonder what the password was. Perhaps it was Picard's favorite beverage.
Tea Earl Grey hot.
Okay everyone, those are our 10 little known features of the USS Enterprise 1701D. What do you think? Did I miss any? And which one was your favorite? Please leave your comments below, subscribe if you're new, give this video a like, and if you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.